This program is brought to you by DJ's Goalpost Sports Bar and Grill.
Oh, what a happy new year it will be if the Packers can beat the Bears, secure that number one seed in the NFC, and a couple wins away from the Super Bowl. How incredible a way would that be to kick off 2021? Hi again, everybody. I'm Tom Pippins, along with John Dodds, the Packers historian, and Michael Rachel. We're so grateful for him. This is the Pippin Dodds Packers podcast with Michael Rachel. We are produced by the great Jason Ruck. And JD, let's look back because, man alive, you talk about a complete game in the 40-14 win over the Tennessee Titans last Sunday at Lambeau Field.
Yeah, it was the most complete game of the year. The offensive line was terrific. The defense came to play. They changed up their defense a little bit to stop Henry, the big running back. They played more 3 defensive lineman sets. So it was a traditional 3-4. And then maybe they put 5 men on the line with 1 middle linebacker. So they, rather than doing that 2 defensive linemen and 2 middle linebackers thing where it seems like they're making tackles 5 yards in the backfield, they got more stout at the line by putting an extra defensive lineman in. So it sure worked.
Michael, we talked about that defensive Mike Pettin seemingly playing their best football at the right time, forcing turnovers and doing much better against the run. When you came away from that game, as you've had time to reflect, how impressed were you, especially when you hold a guy like Derrick Henry, the leading rusher in the league, below the century mark?
Yeah, I was really impressed, Pip. As JD just mentioned, Derrick Henry didn't have his Derrick Henry game. We kept him under 100 yards. He went 23 carries and 98 yards, but also through the air, we were able to keep them at bay. Tannehill just threw for 121 yards. The defense played pretty well, and I went deeper into the numbers, and I know at the beginning of the year, everyone's like, this Packers defense is a liability, and they're not very good, but throughout the whole year, we're 7th in opponent yards per game, 8th in opponent first downs per game, 14th in opponent rushing yards per game, which is middle of the pack, but everyone thinks the Packers rush defense is one of the worst in the league. And then we're 6th in opponent pass yards per game. Jair Alexander, Darnell Savage, Adrian Amos, Kevin King, they've been playing really well this year. And I still think this Packers defense is more underrated than they're getting credit for.
Yeah, as you point out, the numbers are markedly improved. And yet in total yards rushing, not so great. So they bring in a guy with an awesome nickname. And John Dodds is all excited about it, right, Michael? Texting us all. Snacks Harrison, Damon Snacks Harrison. Can this guy really help out in terms of stuffing that run, John?
He can if he's focused. Now, I'm not 100% believer because if you can't make it in Seattle, then they're the team that gives you the widest berth in terms of kind of taking guys with who are kind of edgy. So obviously he wore out his welcome somehow. He has to be put on waivers. I don't know if I totally buy that or whatever, but the Packers need to be stout at the defensive line position. And I was watching Brian Price, and it seemed like Brian Price and Lowry were both taking on 2 blockers, but they were being pushed. And this guy, goes 360. And Anthony Rush, the guy they picked up, also goes 360. Picked him up about 3 weeks ago. But it's interesting, with COVID, I see what the Packers are doing. They picked up a kicker, they picked up a punter, they're picking up players, and they're stashing them in hotels during COVID for protocols for about a week to 10 days. And they test them. They know they're free. They're not going to contaminate the locker room with COVID and wreck the season. So they've expanded their roster, and they have some guys ready to go for hopefully another 4 games to the Super Bowl.
Well, and I think he texted he was all in. And if he is all win, if he's motivated, it will be all win and all in. I think it'll be fun to see how that goes. On the other side of the ball, what more can you say about A.J. Dillon that has not been said, Michael? This kid was an absolute horse.
Yeah, one last thing about Snacks Harrison before I get to AJ Dillon is Matt LaFleur earlier today said he might play this weekend and he's planning on practicing this afternoon. So we
Oh,
might
good
see him
Lord.
we might see him as early as this Sunday against the Bears. But
Fantastic.
we'll have to monitor that. But AJ Dillon was outstanding last week, Pip, as you just said. He hasn't really seen playing time this year, which has frustrated a lot of Packers fans, given that he was a second-round pick, and you want to see your top picks, contribute to your team right away, especially when your first-round pick is inactive every single week. But 21 carries, 124 yards, 2 touchdowns. Didn't really have to use Aaron Jones that much. He just carried the ball 10 times and had 2 receptions with Jamal Williams out. That was a key thing for the Packers going down the line.
Well, you said it. And back to Dillon as the first Packers rookie running back to rush for the century mark and score twice in a game. So most impressive, and you just love it happening at the right time. John, I don't know how much more we could say about Aaron Rodgers, MVP candidate. Maybe he slipped past Patrick Mahomes with the 4 TD tosses. And Davante Adams. That is just magic. I think we will look back at the two of these players are the most prolific duo now in Packers history and say, unbelievable. What a privilege to watch them.
It really is. Some of the catches that they were being made, the timing in the snow was super impressive. And there are records that Adams is going after this weekend against Chicago, team records, and he's only played in 14 games. That's the amazing part of it. So it's a privilege to watch it. And very few times that I think Davante Adams has taken a step over Jordy Nelson and Greg Jennings. I always viewed those players as not number 1 wide receivers, but very good number 2 receivers. But Adams is a number 1 receiver, very much like Sterling Sharp, very much like Javon Walker for about a year and a half before he got hurt in 2004, and James Lofton. Those are the number 1 wide receivers that require double coverage. And the interesting thing is probably half the balls he caught last week against Tennessee were designed runs. You could just see that instead of handing the ball off, Rodgers made a signal and threw it out to Adams, who had some space on the flanks.
Adams has 109 catches, 1,328 yards, and 17 touchdowns. 17, Michael, as you were saying, to get up to date with the 3 last week. And he has missed, as John points out, 2.5 games. Needs 4 catches to surpass Sterling Sharp's single-season franchise mark of 112. Needs 2 touchdowns to beat Sharp's record of 18 from 1994. Needs 192 yards to top Jordy Nelson's yardage record of 1,519 set back in 2014. Wow, huh? 17 is something else.
And to go off of that, Pip, 2 things happened. For my generation, a big deal is he was just awarded the 99 club in the game Madden. It's a video game, and it's rare company to be in that. So Aaron Rodgers kind of made a big deal about it with Davante Adams. But there's another one, a statistic that I saw today that just blew my mind, is that Davante Adams has more reception touchdowns than 5 NFL teams. He's got more reception touchdowns by himself than the Panthers do as a team, the Jets do as a team, Washington, the Giants, and New England does as a team, which is incredible.
It is. You always come up with these great numbers, my friend. I love it. There's no question about it. John, anything else you want to say about the Titans game that maybe stands out to you? An emerging defense, A.J. Dillon, the magic of 12 and 17, people making plays at the right times, guys stepping up on both sides of the ball. I think it's worth noting that with Corey Linsley back, the offensive line was in sync again, as opposed to what happened in the Carolina game when Rodgers was sacked 5 times.
Yeah, I guess 2 things. Number 1, you bring up Linsley. I was kind of thinking let him go and be a free agency, and because you have Jenkins there who can do just as good a job. I guess I've rethought that. As long as his back is okay, because he might be. The Packers, I remember, did not sign T.J. Lang a couple of years ago, and rightly so. He was kind of at the end of his career, and his body could only withstand so many injuries. If Linsley can still play, definitely sign him, because if somebody gets hurt, you can always move Jenkins there to plug the hole in the dam. So that's an interesting guy. I think with Aaron Jones, you can franchise him, and that's where your leverage is to keep him. And then the only other thing would be Packer fans have to be patient during these drafts, because all of a sudden the 2019 draft of Gary, of Savage, of Jenkins looked like it was kind of a bust last year, not much contribution, but look what's happening now. Jenkins is an all-pro. Savage is playing like Nick Collins, and Gary is starting to assert himself. Last year, we had said on the broadcast or a podcast that the thing that I noticed most about Gary is his strength, being able to bull rush. But he's green as grass and he has no instincts. But he kind of shut up. He kind of went around the Smith brothers and tried to hang around them, and they'd say, "Go get coffee" or "Go get donuts," and he did his little thing. But by hanging around them, he was able to learn more technique, and those veterans appreciated that. So now you got a guy who can bull rush, and he's got the speed to go around. So they could really have a nice player. That 2019 draft is looking a lot better.
It certainly is. Kenny Clark, Dean Lowry, Zadarius Smith, Chris Barnes, Jerry Alexander, Darnell Savage. He had his fourth pick in 5 games, almost had a second pick against the last opponent out there in the win over the Titans, Adrian Amos. What stands out to you most as you look at this team, Michael, right now, going into what we have to call the game of the year?
Well, I think it's just their total performance, as John said last week. It was the first complete game we've seen from them all year. Every game we leave thinking with a little bit of grain of salt of this didn't look that great and it's going to hold them back in the playoffs. But last game, there was nothing, even special teams. There was really nothing that we're like, I'm not confident in this. So that's what has me most excited about going into Chicago now, where they have only lost, I think it's 3 games since 2010. That's what I'm just most excited about, is how well they're playing. It seems like they're about to peak, which is the perfect time to start peaking.
Yeah, the great ones, and it's happened in past years to Packers Super Bowl champions. You are spot on. They have played well at the right time. If anything in the way of a criticism of the Packers offense, at times a lack of consistency, but it seems now that they are definitely in rhythm. So they're 12 up and 3 down, John, and now you have to go against the Chicago Bears. And there are a lot of fans saying, hey, we should be fine. I'm the worrywart. It's the rivalry game. It's in the Windy City. This is a team that is now 8-7. If they can win, they can get in even if they lose. But if they win, they're in the postseason party. And the last 4 games they have, as we've been advertising, scored an average of 30-plus points a game. They hung 41 on a weak Jacksonville squad. So what do you think about Matt Nagy's squad?
Well, it's going to be definitely a dogfight. Anytime you play, just watching the last 60 years of this series, basically doesn't matter what the records are, you're going to have a difficult game. Their offense, they put Trubisky back, and they've been scoring 30 points or 40 points in each of the last, I think, 4 or 5 weeks. And the reason they're doing that is Trubisky has that running threat. They're doing this read business where they're freezing linebackers and creating more space, handing it off to the running backs. And Montgomery's done really well. So the offensive line seems to be playing a lot better than they were. And when the Packers just rolled over, and Tony Dungy said that the Bears looked like they quit. They didn't have Hicks, the Akeem Hicks, their best defensive lineman and arguably the best player on the field for them on defense. So I think what this comes down to is the Bear defensive backs. Deion Bush has a foot injury, and Jalen Johnson is nursing a shoulder, their impressive rookie cornerback, and Buster Skrine had a concussion last week. If they have 4th and 5th stringers coming in there, Rodgers will pick them apart. Or do they shoot them up and have everybody play? Because it's go time for them. They need to win to make the playoffs, or hope that Arizona loses.
Michael, you see the Bears and Matt Nagy, the head coach, giving up the play calling duties to the offensive coordinator. There just seems to be, again, talk about rhythm, a different rhythm. The aforementioned David Montgomery is running well. I mean, this team is hitting on all cylinders also when they were left for dead after losing, what, 6 in a row earlier in the campaign?
Yeah, they came into the Packers game losing 4 in a row. That streak went on to 6 before they've won their last 3. And as you mentioned, it's been their offense in the last 3 games, averaging over 30 points per game. When you think of Chicago, that's the last thing that would come to your head. But they're one of the best offenses the last 3 weeks. They haven't really played anybody good. But my concern for this week is David Montgomery, just because he's a different style back than Derrick Henry was a week ago that the Packers faced, where Henry would just run downhill right at you with a lot of power. David Montgomery's more shifty. He's able to hit some holes and bounce outside more than Henry would. So I'm interested to see how they can react to the Bears running game, since it's so different from Tennessee's running game just a week ago.
John Dodds, the key to the game for you, and give us a prediction, would you? Sunday afternoon, Packers, Bears with number 1 seed overall on the line for Matt LaFleur's squad.
Yeah, it's incredibly important. It's not the home field. It's you need 2 games after a rest week to get to the Super Bowl. So the scenario is, if the Packers lose, you could be playing Tampa, and then you could be playing probably New Orleans, and then playing at Seattle. So that's the scenario. Or you rest a week and you play possibly the Rams or New Orleans in Green Bay, and then you play Seattle in Green Bay. That seems to be a much more attractive alternative. So this is huge. Again, I think it's the defensive backs for the Bears who plays, because if they can work the flanks, and just look at the injury report, Michael brought a great point up before. He said that LaFleur said Snacks Harrison might play, and looking at the Packer injury report, Kingsley Keke had a concussion last week. That wasn't reported on at that night, but he didn't participate in Wednesday. So that might be one of the reasons why they would bring him in like that and have him play right away. And he looks like he's, quotes, cable ready, because he was making tackles and really stuffing the run at Seattle. So stuff the run and exploit the Bears secondary if their subs are in. And I think the Packers win 30-23.
Well, I like that one. I would feel real good. I'm sure Packers fans would. The key for you, Michael Rachel, and an outcome, please.
Yeah, I'm with John on the key. I think their defensive backs for Chicago are going to be pretty weak this week. And with Patrick Mahomes reportedly not playing this week for Kansas City, it's a free week for Aaron Rodgers to move the needle in the MVP race. And I think he's going to try to take advantage of that with Chicago's depleted secondary. So I think the Packers will put up a fair amount of points, and I think it'll be a lot of Rodgers passing touchdowns. I think they win this one 27-21.
So maybe a little bit more low scoring. Yeah, I do think you brought up a terrific point when you talked about David Montgomery, a different runner than Derrick Henry. So on that side of the ball, can they control him and make Trubisky win the game offensively? And then on the other side, I think it's the great Aaron Rodgers. He seems to be on path for that 3rd MVP of the league. I think it's within his grasp. I think he knows that. I think that his legacy is most important to him. I think he's going to come out and have a fantastic game, and so is Devontae Adams. And I'm sorry, but the Bears don't have 12 or 17, and that's why I believe they will prevail and not have to worry about whether Seattle loses, so they can kind of back into number 1. So I'm going to go, just to throw it out there, let me say 29-26. The Packers will prevail in a close one. They all seem to be close, especially at Soldier Field. Lots of fun. Any final comments from you, John Dodds or Michael?
Yeah, I have one that you hate to get caught up in the euphoria of playing a Tennessee team in the snow and everything seems to be working. However, the way that there's improvement coming out of different areas with players, with Savage, with Gary, you're getting players stepping up, Barnes at middle linebacker. This has a feel like 2010 to it. In 2010, the Packers had a ton of injuries, 17 guys on IR. But at the end of the year, they started taking a step up. They beat the Giants and they beat the Bears. I remember the Bears saying, we want to knock these guys out. We don't want to face them in the playoffs. But guys that came out of nowhere, Eric Walden, the linebacker, Starks, the running back, Corliss, the blocker, Zambo, Tremont Williams started playing like a number one cornerback. Nick Collins was elite, and the offensive line was really solid. That was in 2010. But if you look at 2020, you got Savage playing like Nick Collins over the last 6 games, 3 interceptions. And even when he drops them, he's making plays and batting the ball down. You got Alexander, the cornerback, he's playing like Tremont Williams. And you got, if you pick up a Rush and a Snacks Harrison, they're your defensive tackles, 360 pounds, just like Howard Green was. And is Dillon, the running back, coming out of nowhere like James Starks did. So you have a lot of interesting parallels. They're relatively injury-free, knock on wood. If they can just take care of business and get a bye, who knows?
That's why we call him the Packers historian, and especially when you can drop in Frank Zombo. I mean, how good is that? That's a terrific analogy. That's what excites me, Michael, as we come to a close here, is that they're playing well at the right time and getting contributions from everywhere.
Yeah, the people you don't think are going to step up and contribute are the ones contributing right now, and it's really fun. Like a couple weeks ago, Chris Barnes with the I think it was Chris Barnes that knocked the ball out of Teddy Bridgewater's hands at the goal line. It's just plays like that where these we knocked this Packers defense for not running around the field and hitting hard like Tampa Bay's defense did earlier in the year. But now it feels like we're one of those teams where the defense is playing hard, hitting guys hard, and they're becoming more feared. So it's an exciting time to be a Packers fans. You're one win away from having the bye in the NFC, which is so important, as John mentioned, and then we'll see what the postseason holds for them.
You said it. Just to leave you with a couple of numbers, the Packers, of course, against the Titans, and I think we'd all have to admit they got some breaks from the Zebras, didn't they? The second team, though, Green Bay in Super Bowl era, to have no penalties, no punts in a game. And for Aaron Rodgers, he has 6 contests now where he has thrown for 4 or more touchdowns. So he's the man. Devontae's the man, and that's why I think the Pack will go to 13 up, 3 down for the second straight season, but hopefully have a better postseason that leads to a Super Bowl berth. So for John Dodds and Michael Rachel, our amazing producer, Jason Ruck at WisconsinSportsStream.com, I'm Tom Pippins. Thanks for being with us, everybody. Can't wait to have our viewing party with you on Sunday. You can get involved and get some questions for Michael Rachel, pippindodds.com/ask. We look forward to that very much, our Elephantly marketing team. We also have Don Matovich, DJ's Goalpost in Menominee Falls, Professional Construction, Inc. for Milwaukee. We could go on, and of course, we have you. So WisconsinSportsStream.com, pippindodds.com if you want to take part in our viewing party during the game. So we'll see you Sunday, everybody. A happy and blessed New Year, and wouldn't it be super if the Pack get another victory? So long, everybody.